burnout's never physical. It
No.
might manifest physically, but you're not burnt out because you've overworked a limb. You
Yeah.
burn out because you've overworked the emotional side of you. Like you just completely depleted all your stores.
So, welcome to my guest, Max Latimer. I want to welcome you today to the show, Executive Exhale podcast. Max, just for those who would like to get a bit of an intro on who he is, Max has gone from being a high school dropout to an esteemed coach and consultant and has worked with over 600 business owners now. I met Max myself as a client looking to increase my marketing reach as a new coach consultant, and he helped me out tremendously. And Max is now on a journey to uncover and rediscover the essence of what it means to be purposeful, to be heart-led in terms of being a creator, and walking the path of a soulful discovery. So I want to hear a lot more about that. And he now gets to help high achieving humans, really who've lost themselves in the achievement of obtaining the stuff of life, the pursuit of more, and reconnecting with their trust of their inner knowing and creating a deeply connected life. Welcome, Max. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me, Tammy. This is cool. I'm into this a lot.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've been in your circle now for about 18, 24 months, something like that. And I've really been watching you on Facebook and your content, and it's so deep and introspective. So I would love it if the audience could learn a little more about you, your personal journey, and maybe some of those pivotal moments that had helped you to uncover who you are and where you want to go next.
Yeah. Well, I do a lot of reflecting. I think the essence to any of this needs to be in the reflection of how far we've come, as you appreciate the journey you've been on. And there's I've noticed a pattern with my progress, and the pattern typically, my growth usually comes after I've had a major step back. Started to get to a point where I was actually looking for those challenging moments in order to remove myself. It was basically, if you were to replace step back with let go of
Mm-hmm.
something that served me quite powerfully in the past, to then create space for this new way of being. Basically, one of the first examples was when I was about 29, and I was the guy who didn't take responsibility for his life, and I was always looking externally for others to validate
Mm-hmm.
me, to to basically to do the work, right? I was an employee. I adamantly and openly said that working for yourself would, like, why would you do that? Like, there's no freedom in that.
Yeah.
But my philosophy back then, even though I didn't really understand it, was that the more responsibility you had, the less freedom you had. And I soon flipped that around on itself, and it became the more responsibility, the more freedom, right? Because you had more control over your destiny. It was about where you wanted to go. When I realized that I wasn't taking responsibility for my life, I basically said, because I knew there was this thing inside of me that needed to come out, but I just didn't know what it was. It was, for me, it was more around potential.
Mm-hmm.
I knew one life it had to be something I wasn't seeing, that I didn't get.
Right.
And I wasn't surrounded by people who were speaking in the way that you and I are sitting here. Like, if you had a back then, if you had said in 11 years, I'm going to be sitting here on a podcast talking to someone who does high level heart centered breath work with executives, and she's
Mm-hmm.
asking me questions about how I can help those kinds of people too, I would have told you you're crazy,
Right.
right? But I made the call and I went out and took a different action. It was basically, I need to do something different. And that step back was one, my first response to that was, with my level of awareness, was, well, I'm going to need money for this thing. I'm going to need to be able to fund the life I want. So I was like, how do I make money online? This is my get out of the car industry and into something else.
Yeah.
So I did that, and then I pulled the thread on that. But in order to make that work, I actually had to leave the car industry. And to my original point, I basically took a 50K pay cut to go and sit in a tour desk, which was maybe 4 days a week.
Right.
And it also allowed me, because of the conversation I had with my boss, because we worked in a tourism destination. It was basically 6 months on, 6 months off. On that 6 months off, even though I was in the tour desk, it was just really slow.
Right.
And I eventually started to get into things like copywriting and marketing and learning about that. So it allowed me the space to be able to start to pursue these other passions, which were just a few steps away from where I was, because I was in the car industry and I did hospitality. Sales on some level was of interest, and I had to learn how to do that. So to kind of pull that story in, it was the step back. I went from 2 cars to 1 car, 50K down on what we were originally bringing in, which was a bit of a kick in the pants. But it was all in this pursuit of where I really wanted to go, and I actually had to go and figure that out and discover it. But that would have been one of the biggest catalysts, is to realize that that was actually a superpower, and you start to see how the rest of the world works. And very few people are like, most people don't want to let go of what they've got. They just want to stack more shit on top. That's becomes the game. That's what you see inside of people. You go, and you're too attached to your shit. Let go, because there's more out there.
Oh, yeah. I think that was probably one of the biggest drivers for me was in shifting my executive career to executive coaching was the same notion. I remember sitting outside thinking, "What the hell am I doing?" I'm sitting out here, I've got a six-figure income, I can go to Walt Disney World with the kids, I can do all those things, but I'm miserable. I feel soulless. Like there's this big void in me
Mm.
that I don't know, I wasn't feeling connected to the world I had built. I'd built this big world around me, but I didn't feel connected to it. So I felt this desire to, for lack of better words, escape. And interestingly, it was a little bit of it was actually watching your progress as well in the last year, just watching you online. I was like, man, like I validated, I made the right decision because when we start to do that inner healing, and I'd love to sort of hear more about that healing process for you, that journey for you, because I know for me, coming from big T, little t trauma as a child, and having that affect my leadership in terms of toxic personality traits or behaviors or hyperdrive, perfectionism, all the things that come up with that kind of background. As I started to go more and more into my healing journey and start to realize who I really was as a person and how much I had forgotten because of this big life I had built, it became more and more evident to me that I had to look at shifting. I had to look at really trying to embody who I really was. And I had a coach, a very smart friend and coach of mine, say to me, "What does a fully realized, a fully expressed Tammy look like?" And it had me go, "Whoa, what does that mean?" What exactly
Mm.
does that mean? So I would love to hear a little bit more. I know that you went on a vision quest, and I know you're going to be talking a little bit about a community that you're developing, but from your own perspective, when you talk about that pivot, what's your healing journey been like in terms of dealing with those inner critics that have come up, the blocks that have come up along the way, sort of some advice maybe that you might have for people who maybe want to make these shifts but are just too afraid to do it?
Well, the first bit of advice I'd have for people is you've got to be kind to yourself, right? Because 11 years hasn't been smooth sailing. It's not just off we go,
Yeah, exactly.
right? There's been a few sort of like 9/11 moments where shit's just fallen out, the arse end of it has fallen out of it, right? But they're blips on the radar in comparison,
Yeah.
right? And it's the reflection that helps you see how far you've come. And having good support around you is also super useful. But
Mm.
one of the big changes that I see, and this is honest, my unique perspective on it is that I got lost along the way with trying to do the work, right, and figure my own shit out. So I realized that it all started with me, right? It wasn't out there. So if you can make that distinction between internal and external, or intrinsic
Mhm.
versus extrinsic, then you've got two different worlds in which you can play in, right? And
Right.
it's the internal that then creates the external, right? So it's just it's all a reflection of what's going on inside, right? Harder to see, but that was basic. That was the first one. The second one was, it was in the language, doing all this work. Like you said, how's your healing journey be? Like I've never referred to it as a healing journey. I've only ever referred to it as just wanting to be a little bit better than I was. I never considered myself, and I know when you say healing journey, I know you don't mean someone's broken, needs to be fixed.
Exactly.
I fully get that, and that's another
Yeah.
key distinction for people to understand too, is that
Yeah.
there's no broken, there's just improvement, right? It's evolution.
Yeah, it's about being our best selves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that language around healing, it's like, because I hear people use the words like healing and trauma, and I feel like there's an immediate disconnect, because I don't think
Right.
people realize that like, because trauma is a whole bunch of shit that you absolutely don't believe it is. Versus trauma, you go trauma, you're in a 10-car pile up, right? You almost lost your
Yeah.
life and it was super traumatic. Like that's kind of where people's heads go.
Right.
So I don't think about it as trauma so much as it is about this it's simpler terminology. One of the real good ones, to give you an example, was I had a coach. I spent a good chunk of money on this guy. I spent 12 months with him. And one of the terms he used, it was limiting beliefs.
Mm.
And I couldn't get past limiting beliefs because as we were doing this limiting beliefs and I'm floating up above myself and looking down at myself and like future and past and timelines and all this sort of stuff, I was like, yeah, cool. Like in the moment, it felt good. And I was it was useful in the moment, but I couldn't
Mhm.
translate that into a new identity and a person who
Right.
I believe myself to be. It wasn't until maybe 4 years later, it was only recently, like within the last 12 months, that I came across a book, and in the book, it started to talk about negative self-talk, right? Or unuseful thinking, aka limiting beliefs. Unuseful thinking, I get. Limiting
Yeah.
beliefs, like, do I believe that? Or like I felt like belief was like up here.
It almost
Whereas,
talks it's almost coach talk is what it almost is.
yeah, it wasn't
Yeah.
accessible. I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
is that what I believe? Because I'd probably my mentality would be to, or my makeup would be to go, no, you're wrong. That's not a belief. I don't believe that. And then go and do it anyway, but just to be completely unaware that I was doing it.
Yeah.
So that was a big unlock for me, was being able to go unuseful thinking or negative self-talk and judgment. That that was one of the biggest breakthroughs I ever had because it actually allowed me to sit down and go, cool, what's going on in here? And based on what was going on here, I would then sit down and I created a process where I would write all of my negative self-talk, my limiting beliefs out because I could cut through this shit and it was an accessible piece of language for me rather than,
Right.
like you said, coach speak. So in doing that, I could start to see it. And once it was on the paper, it became real. And I was like, that none of that's true. Right? It was
Right.
real for me, but it wasn't true. Because I looked at it and I went, that's not who I am. Because I've got this other side to me, which is there's so much more to you than this. So direct conflict with who I believed myself to be versus the shit I was telling myself. And so my belief really came out there because my belief was challenging the things that I was saying to myself. And then I had an opportunity to let those go. So I went into this deep cycle of self-forgiveness and going, dude, the only reason you haven't been able to move forward is because the person in your head has been telling you you're not good enough. And the moment that I got an opportunity to see that and then let it go, I could then create what my coach was trying to share with me years and years ago. So the way in which I like it, the analogy is that if you're going to paint a wall, let's just say you've got a moldy wall, mildew wall in your house. You get a fresh can of paint and you paint over the top of it. It's going to come back. You've actually got to go and do the work. You've got to go and strip the paint. You've got to prepare the wall again. You've got to prime it. And you got to do the fucking work.
Yeah.
And then you've got a nice clean wall, but it still doesn't mean that the wall's going to stay clean forever. You still got to look after it after that. So it made it easier because now the wall is clean. I could go back to it day in, day out, and I would catch myself in the moment. So I wasn't having to get these things that were like just years and like lifetime of just
Yep.
shit talk in my head off. Like I wasn't having to go and paint the wall every day. Right? I just look at
Yeah.
it, now we're good. We're good. Right? You squash a bug on the wall, you wipe it off, you get out of there. You just
Yeah.
keep moving, right? But new things would pop up over time because it was that whole idea around new levels, new devils. So once you broke through that glass ceiling and you went, oh, cool, now I'm here. Now you get to some areas in which you may have been stuck before but didn't realize
Yeah.
just along the new path. So yeah, there was some big pieces inside of, as you said, inside of how I've healed myself has been able to really understand how much like the only person keeping me back was me. No one else was doing it. Like they might have said some stuff to me, but I would take on. But even if someone said something to me like you're not good enough, which no one ever said, but let's just use a simple example. If they had said that to me, what typically happens is you go, oh, that person I admire, respect, said I'm not good enough. So maybe I'm not good enough. And then you go, oh, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm not good enough in that scenario. And you start to take it on. So it's not
Mhm.
them, it's you. But you go, oh, that person said. And it's like, but you kept repeating it. You
Yeah, I mean,
doubled down.
this is neuroscience, right? We know your brain will look for confirmation bias. So if you're
Yeah.
already thinking that, someone will say something and it'll confirm the bias that you already have in your mind
Cool.
around, yeah, see, it's true. I don't know what the hell I'm doing because this guy is questioning me. Yeah, check. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, it must be true.
It must be true. I think the mindset game is one that everybody is challenged with. I don't care, but I find in particular very high performing individuals tend to really, for some reason, be really plagued with this. I have a couple clients that struggle with imposter syndrome, and it's that sort of negative self talk that gets in the way. I know that you like to talk about the vision versus the destination, and it kind of ties into this because if you're going to change your mindset and so you raise your awareness, you know what your negative self-talk is, you can kind of let it go. It has to tie into a greater vision for yourself so that you can do those checks. So I'm wondering if you can maybe walk us through a little bit about your perspectives around vision versus destination, because it seems like a simple concept, but it's one I think people forget when we get busy with our daily lives. I think it's an important thing to bring up. So I thought I'd ask you that question.
Yeah, well, I think we're in a society of people trying to get stuff, right? So we're not coming from anywhere. We're just trying to get to somewhere, right? So the real distinction is the difference between a place to come from versus a place to get to, right? So if I'm here and my sole focus on is to have a fun, exciting, engaged road trip with my family in the car, then yes, I have my destination in the distance, but I'm not focused on it. It's in the GPS, so I know it's in the horizon, right? It's going to take care of itself. My focus is in the car to enjoy the trip with my family. So I've probably prepared some games. I've got something else going on. Maybe we do a few little satellite stops along the way. We really enjoy the process and the journey, right? So destination is about getting somewhere, but once we get there, we often think that was the whole game, was to get there. The real game was the connection that you made along the way, the person you became along the way, the relationships you built along the way, right? So destination versus vision is it's not a destination. It's everything but a destination. It's a direction in which to go. And then along that direction in which to go, you've got checkpoints, which are your mini destinations, right? The places that you want to go, the things that you want to create, like what you're creating here is that your vision has started to become clearer.
Yeah.
So your actions have become more direct, more specific. Your language gets more specific. So if anything, vision becomes easier when you get clearer. I know that sounds like a really weird thing to say, but when you get clearer in here around what's most important to you, the hows take care of themselves. Like that, it's almost like they find you, right?
Yeah.
I feel like it's like people talk about coincidence. I don't believe in it. Synchronicity, absolutely. Like I was at a 2-day event. We delivering to 100 healthcare practices. And one of the guys that was presenting, the owner of the company, like absolute superstar, and he'd given me this checklist it was kind of like a business checklist, but for your relationship to check in on each other once a week. It's like 12 questions. He'd given it to me in the past, and I had it on my notes. And earlier in the week, when my wife dropped me off at the airport, we were talking about what can we do in order to go from this level to this level in our lives and relationships? Like, what are the sticky points and the challenges? And we rattled off a few things, and we went, but the main thing is that we're going to sit down and do a weekly thing. So that popped back into my head, and it was fresh in my mind. And then he mentioned it on stage, and I was like, that's right. So I pulled it up and I flicked it off to Jackie, my wife. Said, hey, here's the start, because I said I would put a bit of a plan together to go, here's a bit of a structure on how we might be able to do this, and we'll figure it out along the way. So I sent it to her, but then the moment I did that, the session ended and I walked out, and one of the clients came over to me and he was asking me a bit about my journey, and that came up in the conversation, and I was just like, come on, all right, it's time. Now is the time to do this, because we're both there to receive it. And I was like, that's what vision looks like, right? You're so in tune with what the fuck's going on in front of you, what's happening right now. These things find you. You don't fob them off to coincidence. It's like, get over yourself that somehow it's all science-based, right? People talk about things like ice baths and saunas and fucking tracking and measuring and all this sort of things. I have this conversation 3 or 4 times over the last couple of days. I just bought an ice bath. As you know, I like to get in the pool when it's cold and do that. I have no idea how the science works. All I know is that it feels good. And I get more out of myself throughout the day because I did it.
Yeah.
And it's not just the cold, it's the introspection in the cold. It's who am I being in that moment, right? I had another guide recently share with me. It's like, it's not an ice bath, it's a pool of stress. And the idea is not to get out of the stress, it's to discover who you are in the midst of the stress and the chaos.
100%.
You can be even keel, even with all this shit going on, you fortify the walls of your vessel, which is who you are as a person.
Yeah.
You don't have to get away from this shit and move around it and make excuses and build little scaffoldings around these little wounds you've got around yourself that you don't know how to deal with, and you're running away and you act like a petulant child. Because that's basically all we are, is that there's a whole
Yeah.
bunch of shit that happened when we were kids. We haven't been able to figure it out as adults, and then we go, that's just who we are. It's like,
Yeah.
it is
Comes
just
your
who we are.
personality.
Maybe you
Yeah.
haven't been shown. If you're
Right.
listening to this, you've got a level of awareness that there's something going on and you're
Yeah.
searching for something. So you're at that level of awareness of, I know I've got a challenge and I'm looking for a solution.
Yeah.
So you're on the right path. At one point in time, I didn't know I had a problem. That's
I
what
love
it
the
became.
notion I love the notion of focus that you're bringing to the table, because it is rooted. See, this is the thing I love about this, is that on one hand, one could say it's very spiritual, law of abundance, law of attraction, all those things, law of assumptions. But at the end of the day, if you look at it from a neuroscience perspective, our brains are constantly looking to validate, our subconscious brains are always looking for what it is that we command them to do. So when you have focus on something and you understand and know who you really are and what you really want in this world, your brain will do everything possible to confirm that for you or find it for you. I like to call it the Volkswagen effect, right? Or whatever car you enjoy, right? If you see a Volkswagen Beetle on the road, or you think about a Volkswagen Beetle, suddenly you're going to see 20 of them on the road. It's the same concept. You're basically priming your subconscious mind to recognize all the things that you want to bring into your world. It is rooted in science. That's what I love about this. So when I'm talking to leaders about breath work and connecting to our bodies, it's really about it's actually about leveraging our own biology and our own energy that we have in our body every day and around us, to make things happen, to make shit happen in our lives. It's amazing.
So
Love
just
that.
to that point, like, because you make a really good point around that, the reticular activating system piece, right? And you feed your consciousness with, hey, this is what I want. The level to which you want it is really important too. It's
Of
like,
course.
where is that level? Is that because the one thing that I found is that where I've come unstuck over the years, and even like especially along the 11 years, like started
Mhm.
coaching, shut it down because I just could not figure it. I was so in my head. This is after
Right.
spending 20 grand on a mindset coach and business coach, right? He even said to me at one point, he goes, dude, what the fuck happened to you? He's sitting there in the conversation. He just goes, he couldn't figure it out. And I'm like, and he was good. And I eventually figured it out. I called him and said, hey, dude, I figured it out. This is what I wanted to share the point on, and around that attraction or that focus point is that it stopped being in here and it started being in here. So
Yeah.
it stopped being about the mindset of it. It started being about the heart set. It has started being about what was I aligned to, because what this was all about was so unique to me. Like, I didn't understand it, but I felt it. And
Yeah.
what I started to tap into was that ability to be able to listen to it. And basically, if you were to look at it in a word, it's intuition, right? It's that inner knowing. It's that
Yep.
guide, the compass. That's the thing that's calling all the shots. And then I just use the skill set and the mindset that I've developed over the years in order to put it into play. Sometimes those two things, like when they're in alignment, the heart set thing doesn't make sense on paper,
Yeah.
which is why I try to get people to move away from the science of it, because sometimes the numbers don't stack up, but it just fucking
Yep.
feels right.
That's
Right?
right. That's exactly
Listen
right.
to that bit, right? Because you look at everybody around you and you go, what's going on inside of me is not a reflection of what's going on out there. And I can't reconcile with the two. So I'll just keep going along to get along, because I know who I am in that world. In this world, when you start to listen to that, you fucking break everything open. Like, your relationships are on the line, your job's on the
Yep.
line, your vocation's on the line. Like, it's all out there and it's scary as fuck. Until you start, like, you've seen my journey, like, because when we first
Yep.
met versus the guy I showed up online again, like just under 2 years ago, two different
Yep.
guys, right? You may have
Yep.
seen it when you first met me. You may
Right.
have felt it at some level, but there was a layer of other shit on top of it, right?
Oh, I just want to say I definitely felt it. Definitely felt the heart-centeredness there, for sure. Even
Mm.
so you hadn't fully integrated it yet.
Yes. That was the thing. It's taken me
Yep.
this long and I still don't feel like I have. I just know I've gotten rid of a lot of the moldy wall.
Yeah,
I've
exactly.
cleared a lot of that away at the level I'm at. I know that at some point the level and where I'm playing now is going to go again. Like, that's the other thing to consider too, is that it's an infinite process. There's no perfect version of this.
No,
Right?
exactly.
It's just deeper levels of awareness along the path, which means you let go of more things. You don't carry so much weight. What's happening out there when it happens doesn't need to be, oh, fuck, it needs to look like what it said on the box. It's like there's no box, there's no instructions. It's like whatever you can imagine, create that thing.
And that ties into the other point that we both agree on is the notion that leaders often, or people get misinterpreted their success. It's based on somebody else's vision for them and not their own vision for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's tied to that same concept where
Mm,
I have a colleague of mine who's a coach who says that it's like you had the right map, but you climbed the wrong mountain,
yeah.
right? And so that notion of, I believe that's how he says it. Better double check,
Mm,
but I believe that's how he says it. Right map, wrong mountain. And connecting to our hearts. I mean, that's something that I don't know what your perspective is on this. I'd be very interested in hearing from you what your perspective, what your findings are with the people that you're talking to. I'm assuming you're attracting people who are already thinking this way, anyways. But I know for me, sometimes executives in particular, they like to live in this space. They don't like to go down here, right?
yeah.
And one of the things I'm really challenged with, and it's not a bad challenge, this is a good challenge. I find this actually a very good challenge because I have fun with this challenge,
Mm,
is getting people to start answering the question, as you just said, but how does that feel? And when you feel that in your body, what does it feel like? And where do you hold that feeling in your body? People often look at me crazy, like, what do you mean hold that feeling? Where do you hold it? Like, where does it, when you say I feels good, like when you feel love, where do you feel it? Do you feel it here in the chest? Like, where do you feel it? And it's just interesting because it's getting people connected with that energy pattern that they're just not familiar with. I'd love to hear a little bit about your perspective on that. Just like, what are you finding from people when you talk about this heart connection piece? I'm very curious.
well, yeah, this is cool. Like you got me at a really good time because, like I said, we just did this 2 day event
Yeah.
and it's all up here. Like, we even have a mindset guy in our group, and he does like, and he's everybody loves it. Like out of all the sessions, that's like the one everybody comes for. But we've got like tactical, implementable. Doing You've been to these in these sorts of
Yeah.
rooms, and
Yep.
doing that shit in the moment, and the coaches we're all around and
Yep.
helping you implement. So like you're getting this shit done, and again, it's all stuff that stacks on stuff on top of stuff that you've already got going on. So I then get a chance to do my session on stage, and amidst all of the doing, the one thing that I do at the start of the session is I actually get everybody to stand up. I get the lights down, I put on some meditation music, and I get them to sit there and just put their hands on their
Connect.
hearts and breathe into their heart. So I had 100 people in the room sitting there with their hands on their hearts.
Love
And
that.
I went through this, it was like 5 minutes, and you should have seen, like, there was just tears all over the place. I just had them go through this process of saying thank you to the people in their lives, just in their own head,
Yeah.
right? Just connected to their heart. So breathing into
Connect to
their heart.
gratitude. Hmm.
So I would ask them to say thank you to the people, this one person or these people in their lives. Give me goosebumps thinking about it now. It's like it's an insane session. It goes for like 5 minutes. It's nuts.
Yep.
And as it happens, these guys are dropping into this space that was just so foreign to them. Some people resisted a little in that the eyes are like, is anyone else watching me kind of thing. It's not until, so that's the first part of the session. And I get everyone to sit down and the whole room is just like super calm. It's like, it's crazy. It's like they've just gone to another fucking planet.
You know what's
Like,
really cool about that too is in that moment, all their heart energy is connected.
yeah, yeah. Like
Yeah.
it's all one. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's it's really, really fascinating and phenomenal to see. But the fallout of that, at the end of that, what I actually asked them to go and do is actually share that with the person they were thinking about. So actually make the call and go and share your level of appreciation, because it's all
Mm.
these things that are unsaid in our lives that we believe the people closest to us already know. So why would I say it? Right? Why would I tell my wife that she knows? I've been with her for 15 years. It's like, it's why your relationship's a bit stale.
Yeah.
That's why it's ships in the night. It's why it feels like Groundhog Day, right? Because
Hmm.
there's no connection and passion and energy. It's all just implied because you've got
Yeah.
time in the game, right? When you really think about it, it's a fucking shitty way to live, but it's a level of awareness. And it's not until you get someone in a room like that and they're captivated, like they can't go anywhere. It's like, it's the next session, right? So it's just like, you're in now, deal with it. Whereas everyone's squirming, they don't want to do it, you
Yeah.
know? So they wouldn't opt into it. Like you try and put that on a lead magnet to get them to come in, and you wouldn't get all the ones in that room. Well, you might get a few of them, because I have had a few of them. The point was, afterwards, I had a bunch of people come back to me and just kind of tap me on the shoulder momentarily and just go, dude, man, you fucking broke me. Right? It was just this thing. It's like, why are you here? Constantly, like you're like a dog chasing a car. It's like you've no fucking idea what you would do if you caught it. Right. And I had these guys, I even had one guy goes, "Dude, can you record that and send it to me?" And the guy who said it, I was just like, "Really?" And he's like, "Yeah, man, like, fucking that was really good." It like I was calm. Like ducked on the
Yeah.
pond, like the duck stopped. The legs
Yeah.
under the pond stopped. Oh, so that's and obviously I get to do this more personally with people, and you nailed it. It's people like you. They're already on the journey, but they just can't figure it out. Like you have been able to figure it out, but it was you a few years ago where you were like, it's supposed to feel a different way than how it's feeling, and I don't know where the disconnect is. Right? Same
Yeah.
as me. It was like, I don't know where the disconnect is. I was like, I'm following all these guys, I'm doing the thing, I'm fucking building this business, I'm making bank. It's great. And then every morning, before my feet even hit the floor, I would kick myself. Haven't done
Yeah.
this, haven't done this, haven't done this, haven't done this. When your wife's standing in the kitchen and she says, "When was the last time you went and hung out with your buddies?" And I'm like, "Oh." And then your coach says to you, "When was the last time you had any fun?" And you're like, and then
Yeah.
you start crying. And you're like, "You're not a
Yeah.
crier." I'm
Yeah.
like, "What is going on?
Yeah. We
How
are
is
so
that possible, bro?"
disconnected.
We're all too fucking serious.
100%. I feel like one of the things I learned in this self-discovery path that I've been on is how much I had forgotten that connection, and more importantly, how much I resisted it at first. Because going to that connection, what would that mean for me if I actually allow myself to go into my heart space? Allow myself to go into my feelings. What would that mean for me if I allowed myself to break down those walls that I had put up for decades to keep me safe? And
Especially as a woman in corporate America.
yeah,
You're
100%
playing a
because
different game than I've ever played. Like that's a fucking
yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
you
one
gotta
of
be
the challenges is
exterior,
it
man.
well, the thing is it's a dance. You know, if you're too aggressive, then you're aggressive. If you're not
Mm,
assertive enough, you're weak. And there's this dance, right? As men and women, but women in particular struggle with this. But I spent a lot of time in fight. You know, people say fight, flight, fawn, freeze. Yeah, I fought or I froze. Those were sort of my two go-tos, right?
yeah.
And I fought constantly. And connecting to my heart has been such a drastic game changer for me. And I feel like it's like a challenge of mine to get a million people or more to connect to their hearts in the next 10 years. You know, it's like a challenge, a personal challenge, because as a planet, we're so disconnected from that energy pattern. And, you know, people don't realize is that your feelings is really what drives your direction in life. You know, if you've just listened to how you feel, the decisions you make would be vastly different, potentially. Like
Yeah.
I think back to decisions I made when I was in my 30s and 40s. Would I have done that if I actually listened to my feelings? Probably not. I have no regrets. I learned a lot. My point being is I think if we start to tune into that, we can really start to trust that inner knowing
Mm.
and it directs us. And I'm with you. One of the things that I found that I've started doing is I've started getting rid of shit. Like I'm a big Disney fan. Anybody who knows me, I've got a tattoo that's got a Mickey Mouse on my arm. I mean, it's crazy. But I had all these pins and collectibles, and I'm like, why am I collecting this shit? It was because I was trying to fill some sort of gap, some hole. And now I'm finding like I don't really need this stuff anymore. It's just stuff.
Mm.
You know, we jokingly say, we got to sell our stuff, Ralph, because one, if something happens to us, we don't want the kids to have to deal with it. And two, this isn't all going to fit in the tiny home, is the joke around the house. This isn't going to fit in the tiny home. You know, so anyway, I love the fact that you slowed down the group
That's
because
it. That's what I
how
was gonna
many
say to you. I think
times did they actually slow down to that level?
people are afraid to do it because that was you brought that up in what you were just sharing there, is that it's not so much it's like the feeling is kind of like the limiting belief
Yep.
versus this negative self-talk. It's like,
Yep.
no, you're just going too fast. All we need you to do is just slow down. It's like, can't slow down. It's like, because when they slow down, then they can access the heart bit. Because they
Yeah.
can't sense it or feel, they don't know they've got a problem.
Yeah.
Right? And they don't realize, and I've seen it so many times where you get
Yeah.
someone who's going breakneck speed and they think the more you do, the more you see. And it's like, it's not how it works. It's the less you do, the more you see, because you can appreciate what you already have. 'Cause at the moment, you're
100%.
moving so fast, you've got no appreciation for the thing you've got, which is why your relationship doesn't work. It's why
Yeah.
your kids don't get to see you or you don't have that connection. You always feel like
Yeah.
there's something missing, right? There's always more to get done at work. And it's like, maybe like, it doesn't mean you can't grow the fucking biggest business in the world. It actually means the opposite to that. It means you can grow better, more aligned businesses easier because now you're actually purposeful and direct, right? And there's this equilibrium that starts to play out. It's not just your life just being tilted in one direction. right? You can still focus your energy and attention. Like you can be strategically overwork. Like if you go, cool, 2 months, I'm going to block out on my calendars. I'm going to have all the conversations as I go. I'm just dialing into this thing for the next 2 months. But I've done it in a constructive way. I've given myself a timeline, and then I've figured out what I'm going to do over that 2 months. So it's okay to do that, especially when you're aligned. But if you're not aligned and you're doing it to escape something, or you defer in your life because you think after the 2 months, then I'll get the thing, and then I'll be fine, and then I can chill out. Then you're missing the point. You're looking at your life as a place to get to rather than a place to come from. Coming from a place is I've got all these things sorted. I eat well, I sleep good, because all of that's more important than what you get done, because you can do what you do, and you would have seen it more than I. The burnout rate with these guys, like the fact we have a
Ridiculous.
term called burnout. And this was something that popped up with our mindset guys. That burnout's never physical. It
No.
might manifest physically, but you're not burnt out because you've overworked a limb.
Yeah.
You're burnt out because you've overworked the emotional side of you. Like you just completely depleted all your stores. There's no
Or you're completely out of alignment with your own ethics or your own sense of self as well.
no recovery, no slowness to let it replenish.
Yeah, that's unfortunately a story with everybody I'm working with right now, and some colleagues of mine who are currently on medical leave for stress-related, illnesses, and it's such it's a bit of, an epidemic right now. It's just everywhere, and especially, I would say, in corporate America, but it's everywhere. Government, public service, it doesn't matter. People are burning out at higher and higher rates, and getting people connected to their true selves is just one way, and I love the notion of if you align yourself, you can still work really hard. But what I also love about that alignment piece is that you're working really hard, but it doesn't feel hard.
Yeah.
Because you're in alignment, it feels more joyful. It feels more comfortable. You want to do it. You don't feel forced to do something because it's something you don't want to do. So it's kind of a different
You go
perspective.
from force to flow.
100%. I love that. Go from force to flow. Exactly. So we could talk about this for hours. I know this.
We're going well.
But yeah, exactly. What's next for Max? I know you've got some things in the works. So maybe share with folks what you're doing as a coach, as a consultant, but primarily as someone who's just in this space, this like leadership space of bringing people along these journeys. What's next for you?
Well, like you said, I did a vision quest, and we probably don't have time to go into too much detail here, but I did a vision quest at the start of the year, which is something that I'd been called to do for maybe 2 or 3 years, and it just lined up. It wasn't the right time. And in that time, I did a few plant ceremonies basically, and they were opportunities for me to dip in, right? So that 5 minutes on stage that I shared with those guys, this was my opportunity to dip in, but over a 24-hour period or whatever. And then
Gotcha.
I basically just took that to another level with the vision quest. So it's basically exactly that 5 minutes that I shared with those guys. It's just done over 8 days, and 4 days in the wilderness, just completely untethered from society. Nothing.
And for those of you in Canada and the US, that's Australian wilderness, just putting that out there.
Yeah, we got.
It's a different kind of ball game.
Yeah, when you're sleeping like 6 feet from like a golden orb spider.
Yeah.
And it would just happen to be golden orb spider season all of a sudden, like 2 weeks before we got there. These big spiders, but that was some of the best epiphanies I had because of them. Like it was really good tie-in. But anyway, again, story for another day. But I took that slowness to another level, which I discovered off the back of shutting my business down 3 years ago. And through that, the vision then came to me that I need to bring this vision quest to more people. So my next stage is in the middle of next year. I'll go and do my practitioner training around how to actually help people, how to facilitate these vision quests through the lineage that we went through. And the interesting bit about that, the vision is to eventually buy a property, get 100 acres, and run them on my own land.
Right.
So be able to bring, similar to you with your retreats, is I want to bring people in to do that. But here's the thing about vision is that the thing started to play itself out. You hear the vision and you got to act on it. Like it's not just all sitting here quiet and soft and not doing anything. So the fact that you're listening deeper, you receive the information, and then you got to act on it. And the hardest bit is to act on it, because it calls you into it calls your entire life of decision making from here when then you go, oh, it actually came from here. Like you feel it, you
Mm-hmm.
literally feel it.
Mm-hmm.
Your body gets like goosebumps and it starts to like heat up and warm up, and you're like, holy shit, like that was a
Yep.
fucking round one. And then you get these signs in nature, which is basically all we are, is a part of
Yep.
nature, but we're disconnected from it, so we don't see it. And it went from 10 years to do practitioner training to the group I just created. It's like I don't have to wait 10 years to start now.
That's right.
And then I created the 30-minute vision quest, which is just basically to help busy people carve out 30 minutes a day just to consider what's going on for them. Otherwise, like old me would have gone, oh, it's got to be this, and it's got to be this, it's got to be perfect. And
Yep.
what are these guys doing? What are those guys doing? I was just like, nope, not doing that. I've been in too many of these courses. I've been in too many of these experiences, and it's got slides and it's got fucking tracking and measuring. I was like, it's me and a phone. I share exactly what's going on for me. I walk you through a simple process.
Yep.
It's 30 minutes a day. That's all. That's all you need. I'm like, 30 minutes.
I love that. And then how do you think what do you think is going to be the biggest impact of people doing this work for themselves? I know we know the answer, but I want to make sure it's clear to the listener as to what they're going to get out of doing this every day.
You become the creator of your life.
Love that.
That's probably the biggest thing. And like we could go into what that looks like, but most people don't think they are creative because
Yeah.
they think creative is drawing or painting or being a musician or some form of artist. But you create your experience with every thought, with every feeling, with every word, with every action. So if what you're currently doing with your thoughts and feelings and actions and how you're interacting with the word is creating your reality, which it 100% is, like there's no way around this. It actually is happening every day,
Mhm.
is shifting that because now you go, cool, well, what would I shift it to? And it's like, well, what do you want to shift it to? Well, I don't want this and I don't want that. And it's like, that wasn't the question I asked you. The question I asked you was, what do you want? And people don't know how to answer the question because what they want is all surface level shit. And it's like, write down 50 things you want, right? You probably get to about 8 and go, no, that's it. Your
Mhm.
opportunity is to sit there in the shit and go, what do I really want? And
Yep.
finish writing the other 48 or the other 38 or however many you need to get done until you get to 50,
Yeah.
right? Because it's not the ones on the surface that I give a shit about, nor will you after a certain amount of time. It's the ones, because all those ones on the surface are basically what you said earlier, which is you making things you think you're supposed to make.
Yep.
Want to get creative, you've got to force yourself to do it. Like, and
Yep.
when I say force, I mean the flow is to call you into question to go, hey, this is where your life is pointing because at the moment it's not lining up. So I need to take a different action. That new action is going to be uncomfortable and you're not going to want to do it. Right. But it doesn't mean it's not to be done. It just means that you're going to a place you've never been to before. And in the darkness is where you'll find the light. Like, and it's because of the darkness that makes the light so powerful. And what
Mhm.
typically happens is, and I was saying this to one of the head coach at the company that I work with, I said, I can't remember where I heard this. This is not my original thinking here, but I heard it and it was like, my light calls your darkness into question, right? So when you're in a room with someone who really is sure of themselves and certain, and they have their firm beliefs on how the world works and they seem to be moving through it, they don't care how you react to their thing. Like, I
Mm.
don't care about your reaction because it's not for me to care about how you react. What it is for
Right.
me to do is to shine my light. It's up to you whether or not you want to see what I'm shining it on. If you're not
Yeah.
ready, you won't be ready. But if you are, then you'll move forward and closer, right? And this is where I've shifted the idea around when people come to me. It's like, if you're not being called to be here, then this ain't going to work. There's something about me that called you to have this conversation with me. I'm not here to convince you of anything. Because if you
Yeah.
need to be convinced, you got to go and do more work before you can come and hang out with me.
And I love that because it really puts the responsibility and the onus back on the individual because we're so externally focused, it really pushes them to go internally focused, to really focus on themselves. I love
Yeah.
that. Absolutely love that. Again, I could talk to you all day about this stuff. I just want to thank you for taking the time to be on the Executive Exhale podcast because I love bringing such dynamic people onto the show, and I just want just share with people where they can find you. Where I know they'll be in the show notes. By the way, there'll be all the links that Max has provided me will be in the show notes. But just verbally, where can they find you if this resonates with them?
At the moment, the best places to get me on, I'm reasonably prolific on Facebook. It's where I'm most consistent. And that's where I do a lot of my writing and sharing
Yeah.
videos and whatnot. So you can hang out there. From there, I've got the 30-minute vision quest. So small community, $20 a month
Yeah.
in order for you to come in and spend time on a daily, weekly, yearly basis just to reconnect with that version of yourself, right? So it's super entry level. It's just a matter of, yeah, I'm gonna check this slowness piece out, right? There's something calling me that I'm not quite seeing. By dissipating that distraction in your life and sifting through all the noise, which is basically
Mm-hmm.
what a remove is, to realize what is noise and what is you.
Yeah.
You then go, right, okay, cool. So now I'm down at this level, and then it all comes back down to being discerning with your actions around what you place back into your life, right? Like you said, you're removing all the stuff and you go, this ain't going to fit into the tiny home. Very, very particular about what you're going to bring along on your journey, right? Because you know what happens when you stack too much weight. And I still get there as well. I'm like, oh, I'm going too far. I'm starting to search for hows. Let's connect back to why. Like, connect back to this. What am I feeling?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the ice bath's a really good way for me to do that. So I found these little tools and mechanisms, like in journaling is another one. You find these little tools and mechanisms to bring you back to your equilibrium and go, hang on, okay, all right, that's me.
Yeah.
That wasn't you went into an old habit. All right, cool, good catch. So that's they're the two places, and it'll evolve from there. But I'm in no hurry.
Perfect. So folks, I'll put the links in the show notes so you can go there to find Max Latimer. Max, I love watching you online. If you go to Facebook and find Max, let me tell you, you will not be disappointed because he's a very prolific writer. And it's not just a prolific writing for the purpose of writing, but there's purpose behind the writing, if that makes sense. So thanks again for being here. And for those that are here again, once again, thank you for listening to the Executive Exhale podcast. Remember to stay mindful, stay inspired, and remember to exhale.